Welcome to this training session on Information Systems Auditing Process Planning. Today, we are going to establish the foundation of a successful audit by focusing strictly on the rules of the road. These audit standards, guidelines, and the Code of Professional Ethics. Whether you are preparing for the CISA exam or managing an audit department, understanding this framework is not optional. It is the bedrock of professional practice. Let's get started. Let's begin by defining what we are actually doing here. Audit planning isn't just about scheduling meetings. It is a systematic process where we define our strategy and objectives, but we don't plan in a vacuum. We rely on a professional framework known as ITAF, or the Information Technology Assurance Framework. Why does this matter? Because without standards, an audit is just an opinion. With standards, it is a professional assessment. In this module, we will break down the 3 pillars of this framework. The Code of Ethics, which guides our behavior, the standards, which are mandatory requirements we must follow, and the guidelines, which give us direction on how to implement those standards. Your goal is to build an audit plan that provides assurance that the organization's systems are safe and valuable. Looking at the diagram, we see as audit planning at the top. It flows directly into the ITAF framework, which is our source of truth. Notice the 3 branches. First, the Code of Professional Ethics dictates our behavior. Second, these audit standards define our mandatory actions, things we simply must do. Finally, these audit guidelines provide recommended practices to help us meet those standards. This hierarchy ensures every audit is built on the same reliable ground. Before we touch a single audit program, we must align with the CISA Code of Professional Ethics. This isn't just a suggestion. It is a requirement for anyone holding the CISA designation. You must perform your duties with objectivity and due care, meaning you follow standards and best practices. You serve the stakeholders lawfully and honestly, avoiding any acts that discredit the profession. Confidentiality is paramount. You never share private data unless legally required. Crucially, you must maintain your competency. Never accept an audit you aren't skilled enough to perform. Remember, violating this code can lead to an investigation and the revocation of your credentials. This mind map visualizes the core pillars of the Code of Ethics. At the center is the code itself. Branching out, we see integrity, which requires us to be lawful and honest with stakeholders. Next is objectivity, demanding due care and adherence to standards. Confidentiality reminds us to protect privacy and never use data for personal gain. Finally, competence ensures we only take on work we are qualified to do and that we keep our skills sharp. Now we move to the standards, often referred to as the S-Series. These define the minimum acceptable performance for an auditor. These are mandatory. You cannot choose to ignore them. Standard S1, the Audit Charter, requires a document that formally defines your authority and responsibility. Standard S2 covers independence. You must be independent in both attitude and appearance from the area you are auditing. Standard S3 reinforces the Code of Ethics we just discussed. And S4 competence mandates that you have the skills necessary for the assignment and that you maintain them through continuing education. Here we see the direct line of responsibility. The auditor must follow mandatory standards. We break out the first 4 key standards here. S1 ensures you have authority via the Charter. S2 ensures objectivity via independence. S3 ensures due care via ethics. And S4 ensures you have the skills via competence. This flow represents the personal and organizational prerequisites before an audit even begins. Moving beyond the prerequisites, we look at the standards governing the audit work itself. Standard S5 covers planning. It mandates that we plan our coverage to meet objectives and, critically, that we document a risk-based approach. You cannot just audit everything. You must audit what matters. Standard S6 performance requires proper supervision of audit staff and the collection of sufficient, reliable, and relevant evidence to support your conclusions. You can't just guess, you need proof. S7 covers reporting. You must issue a formal report stating your findings and scope. Finally, S8 follow-up requires us to verify if management actually fixed the problems we found. This timeline illustrates the chronological application of the standards. We start with S5 planning, where we apply a risk-based approach. We move to S6 performance, where the work happens supervision and evidence gathering. This leads to S7 reporting, where we formalize findings. The cycle concludes with S8 follow-up, verifying resolution. This is the life cycle of every compliant audit. While standards tell us what to do, guidelines tell us how to do it. These are the G-Series documents. They provide guidance on applying the standards. You should follow them, but if you have a good reason to deviate, you can, provided you justify it. For example, Guideline G2 dives deep into audit evidence, explaining the difference between observing a process and reviewing documents. Guideline G10 helps us design audit sampling, discussing statistical versus non-statistical methods to ensure we look at enough data. Guideline G13 is crucial for planning, detailing how to use risk assessment to allocate your limited resources effectively. In this diagram, notice how standards flow into guidelines. The what is supported by the how. G2 guides us on evidence reliability. G10 guides us on sampling methods. G13 guides us on risk assessment prioritization. This structure helps you make practical decisions during the audit execution. Let's deep dive into the document that starts it all. The Audit Charter, governed by Standard S1. Without this, you have no power. The Charter documents the internal audit function's purpose, responsibility, authority, and accountability. It must be approved by the highest level, typically the Audit Committee. It defines your responsibility. What are your goals? It grants authority the right to access records, systems, and personnel. And it establishes accountability. Who do you report to? For external auditors, this is often handled via an engagement letter, but the principles remain the same. This flowchart shows the flow of power. The Board or Audit Committee approves the Audit Charter. That charter then grants authority, defines responsibility, and establishes accountability. All three of these flow down to the IS auditor, empowering them to conduct the work. Without the top box, the IS auditor is effectively powerless. Planning isn't just about scheduling, it's about risk. Standard S11 mandates a risk-based approach. We use Guideline G13 to help us identify areas with the highest risk exposure, so we can prioritize our limited resources. We look at inherent risk, the risk that exists naturally. We look at control risk, the chance that the system's defenses fail. And we look at detection risk, the chance that we as auditors miss the problem. By calculating these, we ensure we aren't wasting time on low-risk areas while critical vulnerabilities go unchecked. The outcome is an optimized audit plan. We start with the audit universe on the left, everything we could audit. We feed that into the risk assessment. We analyze the three risk types: inherent, control, and detection. These combine to form a total risk score. That score dictates our prioritized audit plan on the right. This ensures we focus on what matters most. To conclude, successful as audit planning is about integrating these frameworks into your daily practice. It's about more than just following rules. It's about professionalism. You must maintain competence by constantly updating your skills as required by Standard S4. You must exercise due care, acting with diligence and integrity per Standard S3. And you must maintain independence, ensuring your judgment is never compromised per Standard S2. When you combine these elements, you provide trustworthy assurance that supports the governance and success of the entire organization. Our final diagram shows the state of a professional auditor. We start with competence, Standard S4. We apply due care, Standard S3. We maintain independence, Standard S2. Together, these states lead to the ultimate goal, a trustworthy audit. This cycle repeats for every engagement, ensuring career-long professional success.